New season, new regulations, and new teams. There's lots to be excited about for Formula One in 2026. Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is Ruby Price, and today we're here to guide you through who you should be supporting in F1 this season. Joining me today, we've got Tom Horrox
Hello.
and Jawad Yaqub.
Hey everyone.
Nice to have you both on. Looking forward to this episode. We're going to go through these teams in alphabetical order, constructor-wise. So starting off with everybody's favourite team. Tom, why don't you tell me about Alpine?
Oh, do I have to? To be honest, Alpine is steeped in history, and there's a lot of good things about Alpine to love, but unfortunately, there's also a lot of things not to love about Alpine as well, and most of it does come from the management side of things, which is not fortunately what everyone tunes into Formula One to find out about. But they started off life as they started as the Tolman team way back in Ayrton Senna's days, and through various iterations, Renault several times, Lotus. They now appear in this Alpine current guise with Flavio Briatore in charge as the flamboyant leader, and almost as flamboyant as their livery, which is very flashy, shall we say? At times, they're pleasing the sponsors BWT by putting a splash of pink in with their lovely blue. And just 5-year plan after 5-year plan after 5-year plan. So, but now that they've got a Mercedes power unit, they should jump up the order a little bit.
Yeah, new year, new Mercedes power unit for Alpine over there. The French outfit that gets less French every single day. But Jawad, why would someone want to support Alpine?
I feel like I'm stuck on a loading screen trying to think of an answer for you. I guess Pierre Gasly, he is one of the most popular drivers on the grid. And if you come from Argentina, of course, you've got to get behind Franco Colapinto. That's about as corporate an answer as I can give you there. But the Enstone team have always been a bit of a underdog outfit. So if you're a fan of, underdogs and, you happen to be friends with people who work at Enstone, I guess you have to go for them. But like Tom said, they've had some pretty good teams in the past, or they've run some pretty good teams in the past. Lotus was a fan favorite for many years, not the least thanks to Kimi Raikkonen and his point scoring habit that bankrupted the team, of course. And then you look back to the mid 2000s when the team actually were successful and won a couple of championships with Fernando Alonso. So if you're still stuck in wanting to relive those glory days like Mr. Alonso is, then yes, Alpine's the team for you.
So now we're going to take a look at a team that, are a bit interesting. Jawad, why don't you tell us about Aston Martin?
Well, once upon a time, Aston Martin was the very ebullient and underdog Jordan outfit, and now they have turned into the behemoth that is Aston Martin. However, Aston Martin unfortunately don't have the results to justify the behemoth tag at the moment. They're like that one co-worker that you can't understand is still around and likes to pick fights with people bigger than them, like your Mercedeses and McLarens and Red Bulls. They've invested heavily in this project, or Lawrence Stroll and his consortium of investors have. They've kind of made people offers they can't refuse to come work for the team. And we've got Adrian Newey as their team principal this year as well. Something, if you know Adrian, his career very well, you would never have thought he would end up being a team principal one day, which he is now. So they've got the best designer. They've got arguably one of the most successful engine partners this year as well in Honda. So if you like Bitcoin schemes and cryptocurrencies and fast tracking yourself to success, then Aston Martin is the team for you. With Fernando Alonso, who's still hunting for that third championship, and Lance Stroll, who is that co-worker that you can't understand is still around you.
Yeah, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but my partner's favourite F1 driver is Lance Stroll, purely just because of the fact that it's like, what is this absolute, he's not an amateur, but what is this clearly underqualified worker still doing in Formula One? And if he ever wins a race, I'm never going to be able to look my partner in the eye because it will just be like, told you. But would you, how would you get into Aston Martin fandom?
Oh, Joe, I have a love-hate relationship with this team, and it was basically love right up until about 2022. and then hate ever since. But no, you were going back about Lance Stroll there. Just look back to Hungary 2020. I was very nervous that Lance Stroll was going to become a race winner for that race. But fortunately, he did us all proud and got damage in inverted commas for those who aren't watching. Just turns out that he wasn't as good as the other drivers around him. So yes, no. So it's not an incredible coincidence that Lance Stroll happens to share the surname of the chairman and owner of the team, Lawrence Stroll, who purchased the team solely for his son to become world champion, and then proceeded to pair him with world champions to try and prove that he is a world champion, and then gets beaten by them convincingly. Even though they hired a broken Sebastian Vettel that was not getting on with Formula One and had already mentally checked out, still managed to outperform Lance Stroll. And the only teammate he has ever outperformed is Sergei Sirotkin in his rookie year, who was another pay driver. And even that was close. So that's kind of, if you like nepotism, if you like drastic underperformance, if you like a team that went from being pound for pound the best team in Formula One to becoming pound for pound the worst team in Formula One, then Aston Martin's your guys. I mean, let's be honest, the brand is cool. Like, the cars are cool, even if they are probably going to go bust. But there is a lot to like about the team. But unfortunately for me, there's two things that are not to like about the team, and as long as they're there, they will not be the team for me. Very much missed the days of the Jordan, Midland, Spiker, Force India, Racing Point, even like was still the plucky underdog. That, the pink car, the pink and white car of Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon taking chunks out of each other every race. That was a great team to follow. They went bust, but then they were rescued at the last minute and became Racing Point. And then that race, they were almost took the lead in Spa on the rising from the ashes, Grosjean style, coming out of the flames like the Phoenix. And they almost led at turn 3 at the end of the Kemmel Straight in Spa. It was an awesome, awesome story. And then they became this, as you say, this behemoth that then is just no longer likable, which is just a bit of a shame. They're no longer that plucky underdog. But yeah, there are some reasons in there to support Aston Martin if you want to. I'm sure the people that work there are very nice.
Yeah, and I mean, amongst all of this talk about Formula One, like we do obviously talk about how a lot of the teams end up looking like each other, or like they're very similar color schemes. But if you go back to about 2014, 2015 and look at that, black, silver, orange and green, like Force India livery, oof, top 10, one of my favorite liveries, I think, that, Formula One has run. But, Tom, joining the grid this year, we've been waiting for it for a long time, as have the team that were formerly known as we're waiting for this team. But, we've got Audi on the grid this year. And why don't you tell us a little bit about Audi?
Well, Audi obviously have no history at all in Formula One. They had a couple of cars back in the 30s and 40s that were in Grand Prix racing before Formula One actually existed as a championship. So they have had racing cars in Grand Prix, but not in the Formula One World Championship. So they have zero history in Formula One. They are, if you believe Owain, then they're going to be world champions. So, I mean, they may well be one day, because they have all the backing and they have all the experience within the team and within the organization to do that. However, they will not be world champions this year. I am willing to bet almost anything on that, and my history of betting shows that I'm confident. So, yeah, no, it's they obviously going to have a lot of fans from Germany. They've got the very much the rivalry at the moment going with Cadillac being effectively another new team, except buying an existing team. They've been building that up for several years, but the whole process has been very stop-start. They've been removing heads, and not literally heads of departments. No, they are not a fan of decapitation. That's not on the on the agenda.
They're not French.
No, they're not French, exactly. So yes, if you like the clean cut corporate aesthetic, then Audi is certainly your go-to team there. They've won in pretty much every category they've been involved in. If you only follow F1, then you think, well, who are Audi? They're just those cars that have idiots that drive them and always undertake you on the motorway. But no, they've won in every category they've ever taken part in. They always produce a great engine. I will be surprised if they do this year, but they will get there eventually. We always said Honda will get there eventually. Audi will get there eventually. But yes, their driver lineup, though, we've got a very impressive rookie in Gabriel Bortoleto, and very experienced man with buckets of podium to his name, Nico Hülkenberg. So with his one podium to his name from British Grand Prix last year, very high, both drivers very similar junior careers, very highly rated, and Jonathan Wheatley at the helm, who was the villain of Abu Dhabi 21, the mastermind. He was the Grand Moff Tarkin of Abu Dhabi 21, masterminded the destruction of Alderaan. So, yeah, that is Audi in a nutshell.
That is Audi in a nutshell. And you did give a little name drop to, one of our new constructors joining the grid this season, in fact. Jawad, tell us about Cadillac and their journey to Formula One and why people might want to support them.
Well, Cadillac's journey has been, let's say, tricky, and they've now joined the grid as Cadillac, but once upon a time it was potentially going to be Andretti Cadillac or Andretti Racing, but eventually that all fell apart, and with a bit of tugging and toing and froing between the FIA and Formula One regarding this 11th entry, we got the 11th entry, and it was made on the condition that Michael Andretti would not be involved in the project. Unfortunately, he made a bit too much noise for people's likings, like, a Cadillac V8 engine does, but, we like old school things. Yeah, so Cadillac, they're the new kids on the block, and, seeing as you're new to F1 as well, hopefully, you can get behind this completely new team, started from scratch, and go on their journey. They're properly American, unlike arguably their counterparts in Haas, who, whilst having the American name of Gene Haas, their chassis is built by Dallara. They've got Ferrari engine, or they've used to buy in as many parts as they could under the regulations, whereas Cadillac are building, or hopefully building, all their own, except for the engine, which I think until 2028 they're using a Ferrari engine, and from then they'll be able to have a bespoke GM designed Cadillac power unit. Unfortunately, not a V8. Yes, and their driver lineup, it's a bit like a redemption arc for both Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez, who come back after a year on the sidelines. Perez, of course, was Max Verstappen's teammate for 3 years, and whilst initially was seen as the solution for Red Bull, eventually it got to the stage where they couldn't get him out the door fast enough, while Bottas, was one of the casualties from Sauber's takeover or Audi's takeover of Sauber, and them needing a whole new lineup. So both come with, buckets of experience, more podiums that Nico Hulkenberg have. They're both race winners as well. If you talk about world championship winning lineup, probably not. But in terms of the foundation drivers, I don't think you can get any better than these two. So the only disappointment I have with Cadillac, even though they haven't even hit the track yet, is they're probably not going to have a hot pink color on their car. And that's, that makes me really sad, because we want to see Terry Crews driving a hot pink Cadillac. And yeah, we're not going to get that.
So what you're saying is we need BWT to sever their sponsorship with Alpine so that Cadillac can take up the pink mantle.
It would be wise for BWT. I'm not sure how much they're profiting off that Alpine deal at the moment.
Indeed. Tom, how are you feeling about our new team for 2026 Cadillac?
I really like them as a team. I hope they do really well. I have a bet with myself that they're going to start off by scoring more points than Audi in the first half of the season, but they will finish last. They are going to be nowhere. They're going to be it's the new team on the block. But I will support them because I love Graham Loudon. He was very polite to me once at the Australian Grand Prix. So as a result, I will be cheering for Cadillac, definitely, and with the best number 2 drivers on the grid. And then hopefully the Mexicans won't hate me like they did after my hatred for Sergio Perez in his last stint in Formula One.
Simple, just don't make any bets about Sergio Perez going into 2026. But we'll stick with you, Tom. And when it comes to the next team we're going to talk about, I feel like you don't even need to know what Formula One is to know this car brand particularly. They are incredibly well known. Tell us about Ferrari.
Well, yeah, all the promise of Ferrari with the 7-time world champion and one of the most highly rated drivers in Formula One history, and Charles Leclerc. Fred Vasseur, the lovable, joking team principal. They are an institution. They are not just a team. They have religious levels of passion. The Ferrari Tifosi, as the fans are called, they will be out in force. They will be the most passionate fans you will find, but they will also be one of the most negative. They are very resilient at being let down because they get let down almost every single time. They are the most successful team in Formula One history, but that's purely down to longevity. To be honest, there was back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they were any chance they could win the championship, and they just had the best engine, won lots of championships. Then they didn't win anything for 25 years, and then Michael Schumacher came along with Ross Brawn and various other people, and they changed that, and then they put together an almost unprecedented run of success, which they have been trading off ever since, without a championship since the 2008 Constructors Championship. So they have had many false dawns, one of which was the 2024 season. The years are going by so quickly, but Lewis Hamilton desperately needs them to be fit and fighting for a championship this year, because he is no spring chicken. And Charles Leclerc has been with that team almost his entire Formula One career and deserves a world championship. So that team has got to hit the ground, or it's going to be another massive removal of heads, which seems to be the theme of this podcast, and lots of change and another reinvention. So hopefully they can do better this year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But if you are a new Formula One fan and you're thinking of supporting Ferrari, I really hope you already have a therapist, because you will need one by the end of the season if you don't. But yes, a team that is supplied by Ferrari and, started off being basically considered a Ferrari B team, Jawad. Let's talk about Haas and why someone might want to support them.
Well, if Cadillac was America, then Haas is America Light, or the Temu version, or you bought America from Temu sort of thing. There's so much going on that I could say there. They were once stuck in their ways, but a change in management have given them more freedom, but also a breath of fresh air as well. Even if you haven't necessarily been following Formula One, or, kind of know it from the fringes, you would have known of a man named Gunther Steiner, who known more for his swearing antics than much else, to be honest. And yes, from questionable sponsorship deals, whether it was Rich Energy or MoneyGram or posing for an Audi catalog, I believe, as well at one point in Germany, they've gone from perpetual nobodies to potential rock stars. On a good day, they can seriously impress, but then there's just a lot of days where they're going through the motions. However, with a lot of new backing and Toyota coming on board to pretty much cover the car with their colors, you think that Haas are going in the right direction. And under the wise stewardship of Io Komatsu, who has been around for a very long time in Formula One. He was once upon a time Roman Grosjean's engineer back in the Lotus F1 Enstone days, and now has kind of emerged from the shadows of his sweary predecessor and has taken control of the team. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Gene Haas, who supposedly pays the bills, is happy enough to keep himself and his team in Formula One at the moment. If you want more incentive to get behind them, I guess they are America's original F1 team, or they were the ones technically first there, but also they've got a pretty unique driver lineup as well. Ollie Behrman, potential future rock star with Ferrari, and Esteban Ocon, who, despite having a habit of crashing into teammates, is a pretty cool guy to get behind too. He's got a very humbling backstory that got him into F1. So yeah, that's your reasons to get behind Haas.
Yeah, and personally, I'm a big fan of Io Komatsu because he's a Coventry City fan. But that doesn't make him a 5-star team principal. But this might be a 5-star podcast, and if you do think so, please take 5 seconds or 5 minutes, however long you want to write a review for, to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And also, if you're listening and currently aren't subscribed to the channel, whether that be YouTube, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please consider helping us out with a like and a subscribe. And of course, we do have our Patreon where you can get plenty more additional content. But moving on with the show then, Tom, let's talk about last season's Constructors and Driver champions, McLaren.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me McLaren. I really appreciate it. The second team I supported in Formula One, I started off being a Williams fan, but yes, then I moved over to McLaren. Yes, McLaren have been on the grid since 1966, so they've been around for a very long time, longer even than I've been around, which I know is hard to believe, as I'm probably the oldest involved in this podcast, but there we go. Yeah, they are the current world champions. They won the double champion. They won the drivers and the constructors championship last year. That is the first time they have done that since 1998, winning both championships, and the first time they've won the drivers championship since Lewis Hamilton in 2008. So it's the end of a very long spell, but they have had over 200 race victories, well over 500 podiums. They have won 10 constructors championships, 13 drivers championships. So they are steeped in history, second only to the aforementioned Ferrari when it comes to success. So they still have a little way to go to catch up with Ferrari because of all their early success before McLaren joined the grid. However, they do have Ferrari do have a higher average of championships, even from the point where McLaren joined. So we can't say it's all down to Ferrari's longevity there. So they, as I said, there it is that they are the world champions going into the new season. If you've heard of the papaya rules, it's that hopefully we won't hear that phrase this year, but I suspect we probably will. There's Lando Norris is the world champion. Oscar Piastri is the now fourth year. Give him time. He's only his fourth year driver. Hopefully that'll end. Clearly, he's world championship material. He's just got a couple of elements of his game he needs to hone to get him up to that unbeatable level. And I believe his ceiling is probably higher than Lando Norris's. So watch that team rivalry.
McLaren, they're a great team, I find, as an entry point as well. They were my first team in Formula One. May or may not be related to Lewis Hamilton, but what can I say? I will always have a soft spot for a chrome and red livery just because of McLaren when I joined Formula One fandom. But Jawad, how about you? How do you feel about McLaren, and why would anyone want to be a fan of them?
Well, they are the home of the world champions hotline. Sorry, I had to get that in. Yeah, McLaren, they are often a good entry point for a lot of fans into F1, and it's very lovely to see that, fans of a lot of different generations have used McLaren. If we're looking at us, Ruby, yes, that, chrome and red Vodafone McLaren livery from the 2000s was probably the step on point, for people of our generation. A lot of people I know were fans of Mika Hakkinen and the black and sort of silver McLarens of the 90s, and then of course the iconic white and red, Dayglow red, Marlboro sponsored McLaren Hondas from the late 80s and early 90s, and legendary drivers have driven for them: Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Emerson Fittipaldi, even the founder himself, Bruce McLaren. I mean, while they don't call themselves, or they call themselves a British team, Bruce McLaren was originally a Kiwi. He was from New Zealand. And, if any New Zealanders out there who aren't already fans of Liam Lawson, I feel like, McLaren is a team to get behind. I know certainly in Australia, there's a lot of support for McLaren because of Piastri, but also before then, Daniel Ricciardo drove a couple of seasons for them. And, it's always fascinating seeing what the masses at Albert Park are wearing merchandise wise, because it's definitely transitioned from seas of Red Bull to then, seas of yellow for Renault when Ricciardo was driving for Renault, and now for the last 5 or so years, or particularly since F1 returned after the pandemic, it's just been papaya on papaya every year. So, if you really like standing out in a crowd, I think McLaren is the team for you. Their merchandise is for you. Back in the day with the Vodafone McLaren merchandise, they had those bright red, rocket red victory shirts, which I've still got one is sitting around somewhere. That was like wearing a high vis vest. And yeah, with the papaya, you're not going to be lost in a crowd wearing their merchandise. So if you like to stand out, McLaren is the team for you.
Yeah, just also have a mortgage on standby to be able to buy said merch, because it can get quite pricey, but I think that's quite consistent across Formula One. But who does have some affordable merch? That's Grid Talk, and there's a link in the description if you want to go and check that out. But Jawad, how about Mercedes then, the team that power McLaren currently at the very least?
Well, Mercedes at their height did feel like they were the Galactic Empire from Star Wars. They were very regimented and very corporate looking, and they just were unbeatable machine. But now they're chasing their tails and looking for answers. The last era of regulations just gone was not very kind to them. And I guess, the innovation, while in the past it's been to their benefit. On this occasion, it was not, with their zero side pod concept and just not being able to get on top of the ground effect cards. But 2026 is a whole new era for Formula One, and if you are a new fan coming in, Mercedes could be a team for you to get behind. If you're not a fan of Bose headphones, then definitely consider that a tick box, because Toto Wolff, their team principal, doesn't like them as well. Also, I feel like Toto's got his own group of fans out there as well. I mean, when you've got a deep Austrian voice that sounds very close to Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, you're going to have a group of fans. But also George Russell, he's basically like a supermodel with his poses. If you're into that, that's another tick box. And Kimi Antonelli, the lovable little Italian who still a teenager, still, but he's like Peter Parker, balancing, school life with, his secret life or not so secret life of being a Formula One driver. So, he's a prodigious talent and will get his day on the biggest stage of all one day. And with a new car and what it's looking like for them coming out of preseason testing, is it could be quite ominous. So could we see young Kimi graduate and finally join the ranks of the race winners, or will it be very much his teammate that beats him this year comprehensively? But yeah, Mercedes, once an unstoppable force, now looking to re-establish that glory and really cement themselves as, one of those legendary teams of the sport.
Yeah, and it feels like you shouldn't necessarily have to cement yourself when you're an 8-time consecutive constructor championship. But Tom, how would you feel about Mercedes fandom, and like, how might someone want to actually get into them as a team?
Well, I think now is the perfect time to become a Mercedes fan because you can say, look, I'm not a glory supporter. I joined them when they weren't winning because I'm pretty sure they are going to be they if you want to if always bet responsibly, but if you want to put a cheeky fiver on a team to win the championship, it's Mercedes is your best bet. They've got an incredible driver lineup in George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, probably what I would call a perfect driver lineup because your you've got your eponymous world champion level driver there, George Russell, proven. He's now into his 7th year or 8th year, maybe into Formula One. I've lost track. It's 3 at Williams and this is 4 at Mercedes, I think. So I think this is his 8th season. So he's now ready and complete to win the championship. Kimi Antonelli is an incredible talent, very, very fast, not fast enough to challenge George Russell on a regular basis yet, but he will be. So this year is George Russell's golden opportunity to get that world championship under the belt and then build from there and make this the George Russell era. So there is definitely a strong possibility that Mercedes will be the team to be this year based on everything that you hear from the paddock and what we've seen so far in the non-test shakedown that we have seen pictures from, which apparently was closed to the public, but not.
Yeah, I kept seeing reports of like secret police for the FIA and things like that were escorting people away from the circuit whilst the recent shakedown was going on, which, if that doesn't intrigue you about Formula One, I don't know what will. But Jawad, how about we talk about Red Bull then? Former constructors champions and, drivers champions, but tell us a little bit about them.
So Red Bull, when they came into the sport, were the cool, adventurous and edgy team, very much representation of the Red Bull brand, who was into extreme sports and, basically the disruptors of Formula One. Now they can be looked upon basically like an elder millennial, like myself. They have a personality sometimes as volatile as their car, which, that was a reflection of the previous management of the team, which, under the stewardship of Laurent Mekies this year, and, without Dr. Helmut Marko sitting and lurking in the back of the garage as well this year, I hope will be something that changes about the team and perhaps make the team a lot more likable as well. Red Bull have been very much the villains of Formula One for many years now. And, particularly if you have anything or any idea about what happened in 2021, Tom alluded to it earlier with Jonathan Wheatley playing chief villain on that day over the team radio and whatnot. But yeah, Red Bull that year were regarded as villains, and Max Verstappen, one of the most prodigious talents of the sport, one of the most successful drivers of the sport, can he go after a fifth world championship this year? And will he be given a car and an environment in which he can achieve that too? So hopefully the volatility there will not exist. And same for their new driver, Isak Hadjar. Now, a lot of the volatility around Red Bull certainly was the revolving door of their driver lineup, which they've gone through that many drivers in the last few years. I can't even remember them all, but Hadjar's the latest one, and hopefully, with things calming down, he will be able to thrive in that environment. Once upon a time, they were the type of team that, they would tell others that they need to change if they're not winning. But then when Red Bull weren't winning, they weren't able to make necessary changes and look within themselves to get themselves back up to the winning ways. So hopefully, if you're into that sort of thing, good for you. Red Bull may be the team, but if Red Bull transform that personality, hopefully your personality can change with that as well.
Indeed. And Tom, we're going to talk about a team with a very similar name, and there's a very good reason for why they have a similar name, I suppose. But why don't you tell us a bit about Racing Bulls?
Is that what they're called this week? I've lost track. They've had so many names over the years. They are the junior team of Red Bull. They started off, they were for a very long time, the longest time, the Minardi team. They were the team that had the smallest budget. They would go years without scoring a point. Fernando Alonso scored 2 points for them, and it was just the most incredible thing. Luca Badoa crashed out whilst in the points for Minardi, and then was seen like crying at the side of the track because he knew what it meant to his team to score these points back when only 6 drivers got points in Formula 1. Yes, we used to only award points down to 6th place, and it was a glorious time. But not anymore. And the Minardi team were, after going on for so long and so many times it looked like they were going bust, they finally got bought out by Red Bull as a favour from Bernie Ecclestone. They agreed to buy the team to keep the team going, but they had to keep it based in Italy, which is why it's based in Italy. It was called Toro Rosso, which is Italian for Red Bull, for a very long time. And that followed through for a very long time. Then it became AlphaTauri to sell lots of T-shirts, because apparently AlphaTauri is a clothing brand which I've only ever seen in a shop in Austria. And then they became VCARB, Visa Cash App, Red Bull Racing Bulls, and they decided to drop that and just go with Racing Bulls. So they are the younger sister of the Red Bull team. So like they're the ones that are hanging around in the back of the garage going, can I play with Max Verstappen now? No, you can't. You can't play with Max Verstappen. He's here to see your older brother. So yeah, they got their hooks into Max Verstappen when he was a little bubba, and then they lost him to the big team. That's what happens. What's always happens if they want to try someone out, they try them out in the sister team. They say sister team. It is a junior team. They keep changing their mind whether it's a junior team or a sister team, but let's be honest, it's a junior team. At one point, it had exactly the same car. They are never allowed to beat the Red Bull team. So if you were to support Racing Bulls, you have to do that in the knowledge that they are never going to win the World Championship. They might win the odd race, and they have won 2 races. So it is possible. Pierre Gasly and Sebastian Vettel have won races for them. Their team principal, Alan Permain, has been around for a very, very long time. This is the first time he has been a team principal, but he started off way back in the Benetton era. Then he joined the Lotus team. He was with Renault for a bit. Then he went and joined the FIA. Then he rejoined the Enstone team as Alpine. And then in one of their many management shakeups and scapegoating, he was removed from that team and then joined Racing Bulls and was elevated to team principal when Laura Mekias took the Red Bull gig. So yes, I would not. If you want an identity crisis and you want to never know who you are, what you're doing, or where you're going, then support the Racing Bulls team.
Yeah, and you might not even know which team your favorite drivers are driving for should you choose to support Racing Bulls, because we'll get halfway through the season and they'll be talking about switching drivers around and you'll go, is that allowed? And everyone will go, actually, yes, it is. But yes, their drivers in the Racing Bulls team, Liam Lawson and rookie Arvid Lindblad, who is, where's he from?
He's British, but has a mother with half Swedish and half Indian heritage. So he's a melting pot.
He's a melting pot.
And I love it. I love the Gen Z sort of vibe that both Lawson and Lindblad bring to the team, and it's kind of reflected in their sort of souped up Ford Escort livery that they've got on the car with the white wheels on there. I'm sure you've heard many of those hooning around your parts over there. So yeah, those two. Let's hope that they drive a bit more sensibly than hooning around on the racetrack.
And fun fact about Liam Lawson, his favorite movie is Cars, the Disney Pixar movie. So, he got into the right industry at the very least. But, Jawad, let's talk about the final team on our roster for 2026, Williams, and take it away.
Well, Williams is a team with lots of heritage and heritage without, any kind of manufacturer support or big car brands associated with it, even though they have had car brands with them at times, although a lot of their history comes from being an independent team run by the Williams family and Sir Frank Williams, the late Sir Frank Williams and Sir Patrick Head as well. They they have made a lot of bold decisions throughout history, and a lot of their history, whilst they've had quite a lot of success, there's been quite a lot of controversy around, driver decisions, particularly sacking world champions after they've won their world championships, or, a season beforehand as well. Frank always wanted to go after the best drivers, and that often would come at the expense of actually seeing what his current drivers would be able to do in the following season. So Damon Hill was a famous example. After winning the 96 World Championship, he was without a drive the following season. Even Nigel Mansell, when he won his 1992 championship, he wasn't with the team the following season either. But yeah, they've endured quite a lean patch and a barren patch, you've got to say, since those halcyon days, which was the 90s for them. They're kind of that team that, relies on that past glory to get by. But, now it's a whole new era for Williams, because your favorite uncle and motivational speaker that you'd like at your work seminar, James Vowles, is running the team. He's got a pair of the most friendliest drivers on the grid with him. The walking L'Oreal commercial, that is Carlos Sainz, heartthrob, if you want to call him, and the internet's best cat daddy, Alex Albon, as well. So, with a lineup like that, there's very much a family, sort of vibe to it, which Williams has always been about being a family team. So I think that's still very much part of its core today, even if, they're going about things in a more 21st century and more modern way to hopefully take them back to the front of Formula One. Although, if you're following the news out of Barcelona and the shakedown and them having missed the shakedown and potentially having an overweight car, then look away, because it could be bad news. But they also might have a rocket ship under their belt and just don't want to show it off to the world until we get to the season proper.
Yeah, definitely. And from talking about the internet's favorite cat daddy to the internet's second favorite cat dad, Tom Horrocks, why don't you tell us about your fandom for Williams and why someone might want to get into them?
Well, I used to love Williams when I was a spry little chap. It was Nigel Mansell that got me into Formula One, and him racing Ayrton Senna at Monaco in 1992, just like such a vivid moment. I'd been watching races before that, but I wasn't really into it. That moment for me. So Williams will always hold a special part, especially now that they are back to the correct colours for Williams in blue. I do feel there needs to be a little bit more yellow on there, or at least a bit more white, just to make them look either a bit more like the camel or the Rothmans Williams. That's the colours that Williams are supposed to be. Like you say, steeped in history, everyone loves them. Facilities massively outdated, punching above their weight. Let's be honest, again, they need massive investment, which they do have with Doralton Capital looking after them, but they're due to the cost cap. It's very difficult to get all that spending the money in the correct places. So they are going to be difficult to win the World Championship, but they should be able to at least be in that fifth place. They have the Mercedes engine in the car, so they should be up there. They are going to be that plucky underdog, everyone's second favorite team, and a lot of people's first favorite team as well. So there's a lot to like about Williams. Lots of 9 constructors championships, 7 drivers championships. They've not been winning a lot for a long time, but they will be back, and hopefully this is the start of it here. Maybe not this regulation set, but hopefully very soon they will be up there fighting for wins again.
Hopefully very soon indeed. But that is those are the teams that are going to be in Formula One for 2026. Hopefully we've convinced you to become a fan of one of them, maybe two of them. Why not share the fandom across all 11? But if you have made a decision based on this podcast, let us know in the comments below or over on social media. But what about you guys? Tom, if people want to hear more from you, what can they go and listen to?
Well, you can look for me on the Monkey Seat podcast. We occasionally do a podcast. I don't think we even did the Abu Dhabi Norris winning the World Championship podcast. I think we missed that one. It's myself and Carl. It's Grid Talk's dirty cousin. We just talk about Formula One and often not about Formula One, and we just have a laugh and we make silly bets with each other. Yes, thank you for reminding me, Carl's the next podcast. If you tune into the Monkey Seat, subscribe, because the next podcast that drops, Carl will be naked for the entire podcast because he made a bet with me. How silly. He made a bet that Kimi Antonelli would not finish in the top 7 in the Drivers' Championship. For a little while, Alex Albon had me worried, but then Williams fell away, and so did he. And he was, in the end, comfortable, just missed out on 6th place from Lewis Hamilton, thanks to Lewis's sprint results being slightly better. So, yeah, that's the Monkey Seat. So give us a listen if you want. If not, just make sure you keep listening to Grid Talk.
Yes, please do. At the very least, keep listening to Grid Talk, but also do go and check out Monkey Seat. And yeah, Carl, sorry. Yeah, and Jawad, anything you want to plug at this opportunity?
Yeah, I didn't change my identity over the last couple of minutes. Yeah, actually, something new for me is I'm doing some cricket content for a channel called Quartet Point, which is being helped by fellow Grid Talk co-host George. So yeah, that's something I've been doing the last month. So go check them out. They're on MSN and YouTube as well. You can see my lovely mug talking about cricket, and specifically the England cricket team as well, which, an Aussie talking about the England cricket team. And also follow Grid Talk on all the social platforms at Grid Talk UK.
Definitely please go and do that. It makes my life a lot easier. But yes, if you want to find more from me, I am at Ruby Rose Price on Instagram. And Grid Talk is available on YouTube, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to the race results. Thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support the show further, why not sign up to Patreon for exclusive content? You can get your name in the credits. Just check the description below to see some of our roster. And also make sure you subscribe so you first know when each new episode is released. We'll be back soon with plenty more of F1 content. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast, and goodbye.